Casey Tygrett's written a great book. It's called Becoming Curious, a spiritual practice of asking questions. So Casey, what kind of questions do we ask the God of the universe?
My first blush at that is probably kind of a wild answer, which is whatever comes up. But when I look at the Bible, and especially the teachings of Jesus, one of the things that I wanted to bring into this work, into this book, was the fact that there were certain questions Jesus asked that had this profound effect. The story about three guys, James, John, and Bartimaeus, two of them Jesus' disciples, one of them a blind man on the side of the road. And in two stories in Mark, Jesus asks both the two brothers, James and John, and Bartimaeus the exact same question. He says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And most of us, that kind of scrambles our eggs a little bit, because how often do we expect God to say, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Wow, yeah.
And so the question for us is, if Jesus were to show up here today and were to look us in the eye and say, "What do you want me to do for you?" how would we respond to that? And what that response shows us, and what that curious question shows us, is some of the stuff that's deep within us. Like, what's your first blush answer to that? And what does that say? And what do you do with that? And if you don't know, if you couldn't answer that question, what does that mean? What kind of intimacy do we have with God if He asks us, "What do you want me to do?" and we've got nothing? So that's a really interesting question. So I think the questions we ask a lot of times could be triggered off of some of the ones that Jesus either was posed or that He posed to other people.
I would, as you're saying that, I'm just starting to think, what would I ask? I had to concentrate on the interview here, so I'll have to do that after we get off. But, most of us do journaling or some kind of Bible study, devotional, whatever. Would it be like, say, if you're, reading a certain book of the Bible? I was reading in Colossians today, and he's talking, he is the supreme being. He's the God of the universe.
Yeah.
What kind of question that maybe come out of that is, in what way, Jesus, are you this amazing being that's beyond anything I could comprehend?
Absolutely. And what does that mean? So as you start to ask those questions, there's always the first order question, and then you dig with the layers beneath it. And so there's the question about the God of the universe. And then there's the question about, what do I know about the universe? And the question about, where is my place in that? And what does it mean for me to be a part, but God to be God of the whole? And so you can start to tear that apart and just question each piece of it. And suddenly this big tapestry starts to appear, and we start to understand not only our place in what God is doing, but also what our role might be for that particular day. If you're doing that in the morning, where is my place in the universe that God is
Wow,
the God?
that's a big thought. Okay, so we want to ask God questions,
Yes.
but the God, God the Father, and say you've had a childhood where you asked your dad questions, and some are watching today, and he just, I haven't got time, or I'm too busy. Does that then affect how we might view God in asking Him questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our past experience and that's where metaphors kind of fall short sometimes, is when we call God Father, we have a box that the word Father goes in. And so the question might be, well, what if we created another box? What if God as Father is one that's really difficult for us? And knowing the culture of the Bible, the word Father was very much about the leader of the family and the leader of the community. So what if, instead of seeing Him as Father like we see fathers, what if we saw God in a different box? And what might that look like? What is the image or the metaphor that drives it for us? And not only that, why? Why does that one make more sense than this particular one? Dealing with people a lot of times who have had bad issues with their fathers, and having trouble praying the Lord's Prayer, Our Father. Well, is God my Father in the sense that my dad was my father, or is it a different thing altogether? And what would it mean for God to be your father but not to be your dad? And see where that starts to take you. That kind of question is really, really important.
Well, and we just got a few seconds to go, but we give permission for people to ask questions.
Absolutely.
I know some Christian parents, and being having kids, is asking questions. Well, does God really exist, or why is Jesus the only way? We have to allow them, right, Casey, to ask those important questions.
Absolutely, and we allow those because we trust that the outcome belongs to God anyway. We can lean into His care for us as we begin to ask those questions. And that's what really shapes us. What shapes us most is when we're out on the tightrope without a net, and we trust that no matter what's going to happen next, I can faithfully step into this question and allow God to take care of the outcomes. And that's a stretching experience. And that's why questions for me are a lot more challenging than just finding the right answer and hammering it home.
Good. You have permission. Ask God questions. Casey, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more of 100 Huntley Street right after this.